measures used to be made without any credence to what the government balance sheet was looking like. I think now it is very clear they're balancing it well. And, markets have also changed, the economy has also changed. And I think, as you rightly said, people are realizing that we need to ensure that everyone grows. And to that extent, as long as the fiscal consolidation and the fiscal direction of going to 4.5% fiscal deficit is there, the markets are not going to take it negatively. The other thing, Prashant, is, we don't have any fuel subsidy now, any note. Fertilizer subsidy has come down significantly. So it's all about just basically maybe the food subsidy. I think it's fine.
Yep, exactly. Sajid, that's the point. Would it be actually positive? I mean, if there weren't income transfers, would it be negative? And, if there were income transfers, either Kisan Samman Nidhi or some other scheme, it would be actually good, isn't it? Both as an economist and as a market watcher, because consumption has been so weak. PFCE, personal final consumption expenditure, up just 4% at a time when GDP is up 7%. So actually the absence is bad, you would say?
No, I agree. I think, we need consumption to broaden out. It's been driven by the upper end. And so having targeted welfare support, income support is important because the marginal propensity to consume is high at the bottom of the pyramid. So to the extent that this stokes demand, you then create more demand visibility, and that hopefully, along with the public investment, has private investment. So yes, you do want targeted welfare support, as I mentioned. I think the larger issue, Lata, from a 3-year perspective is, expenditure multipliers tend to be higher than tax multipliers. So if we have to consolidate our deficit, we need to do so without sharp expenditure compression, which then again puts the onus on the revenue side. If we can consolidate the deficit by higher tax to GDP, higher asset sales, that's the least contractional impact on growth going forward.
Okay. Sunil, any pockets of value you're picking up now?
I think it's a tough market, frankly, not too much of momentum. But the good thing about India is that, we have so many listed companies and so many sectors. So banks have not performed. We continue to be optimistic on the bank despite all the so-called headwind. But I think that is one segment where there is interest. And obviously, everything to do with development of infrastructure in India. I think there is still a long way to go for that.
Sunil, within the banks, what's it? Private or public sector banks? The private ones clearly have been lagging.
I think the larger private banks have also languished. Yeah. And the public sector banks, obviously, the top 4-5 names, I think there is still a lot of value.
Okay. Ashok, we have barely, 60 seconds? Your last wish.
I wish they say that on dividend distribution going forward, individuals will only be taxed, like in capital gains, at 10% or 15%.
Okay.
So instead of normal tax of 39%, that is the highest bracket, just bring it down to a fixed dividend tax in the hands of individuals.
Yeah, Sunil is also going to love that because that will be extremely market friendly if they were to announce. I don't know if I should risk another question with Sunil or... okay, we have a minute more. Sunil, if you have one wish, what would you want them to say? Will it be capex, income transfer? Just last one wish.
I think continue with what they're doing. Obviously, what Ashok said would be music to the ears, but continue with what they're doing.
Okay. Sajid, best tax buoyancy number, 1.1, 1.3, what, 13% growth in taxes is fine?
So this year, we're tracking 1.4. We're getting 13% on a nominal GDP of 9, but I think the tax has been quite conservatively budgeted. I would expect 1.1 on a nominal GDP of 10.5.
Okay, so 12% tax growth.
Around 12 and a nominal GDP of 10.5.
All right. I think that's 28 seconds, 27 seconds. So I won't risk another answer because I might have to cut into you all. So Sunil, Neelkant, Mahesh, Ashok, all of you, Sajid, thank you very much for being with us. We're going to touch base with most of you after we listen to the speech. As we get into the speech, what's the state of the markets? Markets actually not doing too badly at all. We are still outperformers in the global firmament. We have just cast aside what the US has done. No rate cuts over here, except a bit on mid-caps, which anyway were overpriced. And there's a lot of green in the fixed income screen. None of all care about it, but the bonds are soaring. 7.13 on the 10-year. It's like a 5-6 basis points lower. Yeah. That's almost a rupee higher on bonds. And the rupee as well. Strong rupee. With that, we welcome the Finance Minister's budget.
माननीय सदस्यगण, आपको बुलेटिन भाग 2 के माध्यम से पहले ही सूचित किया गया है कि माननीय वित्त मंत्री जी के बजट भाषण की प्रतियां आपको हार्ड कॉपी के रूप में उपलब्ध कराई जाएगी। अतः बजट प्रस्तुत हो जाने के पश्चात माननीय सदस्य बजट भाषण की प्रति प्रकाशन काउंटर से प्राप्त कर सकते हैं। आपको यह भी सूचित किया जाता है कि माननीय मंत्री द्वारा बजट प्रस्तुत किए जाने के पश्चात उसे मेंबर पोर्टल पर भी उपलब्ध करा दिया जाएगा। माननीय वित्त मंत्री जी।
Honorable Speaker, I present the interim budget for 24-25. The Indian economy has witnessed profound positive transformation in the last 10 years. The people of India are looking ahead to the future with hope and optimism. With the blessings of the people, when our government, under the visionary and dynamic leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, assumed office in 2014, the country was facing enormous challenges. With Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas as its mantra, the government overcame those challenges in right earnest. Structural reforms were undertaken. Pro-people programs were formulated and implemented promptly. Conditions were created for more opportunities for employment and entrepreneurship. The economy got a new vigor. The fruits of development started reaching the people at scale. The country got a new sense of purpose and hope. Naturally, the people blessed the government with a bigger mandate. In the second term, our government, under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister, doubled down on its responsibilities to build a prosperous country with comprehensive development of all people and all regions. Our government strengthened its mantra to Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, and Sabka Vishwas. Our development philosophy covered all elements of inclusivity, namely social inclusivity through coverage of all strata of the society, and geographical inclusivity through development of all regions of the country. With the whole of nation approach of Sabka Prayas, the country overcame the challenges of once in a century pandemic, took long strides towards Atmanirbhar Bharat, committed to Panch Pran, and laid solid foundations for the Amrit Kal. As a result, our young country has high aspirations, pride in its present, and hope and confidence for a bright future. We expect that our government, based on its stupendous work, will be blessed again by the people with a resounding mandate. Inclusive development and growth. Our humane and inclusive approach to development is a marked and deliberate departure from the earlier approach of provisioning up to village level. Development programs were thus provisioned. In the last 10 years, however, have targeted each and every household and individual through housing for all, Har Ghar Jal, electricity for all, cooking gas for all, bank accounts and financial services for all in record time. The worries about food have been eliminated through free ration for 80 crore people. Minimum support prices for the produce of Annadata are periodically increased appropriately. These and the provision of basic necessities have enhanced real income in the rural areas. Their economic needs could be addressed, thus spurring growth and generating jobs. Social justice. Our government is working with an approach to development that is all-round, all-pervasive, and all-inclusive. Sarvangin, Sarvasparshi, or Sarvasamaveshi. It covers all castes and people at all levels. We are working to make India a Vikasit Bharat by 2047. For achieving that goal, we need to improve people's capability and empower them. Previously, social justice was mostly a political slogan. For our government, social justice is an effective and necessary governance model. The saturation approach of covering all eligible people is the true and comprehensive achievement of social justice. This is secularism in action, reduces corruption, and prevents nepotism, prevents by Bhatijawad. There is transparency and assurance that benefits are delivered to all eligible people. The resources are distributed fairly. All, regardless of their social standing, get access to opportunities. We are addressing systemic inequalities that had plagued our society. We focus on outcomes and not on outlays so that the social economic transformation is achieved. As our Prime Minister firmly believes, we need to focus on 4 major castes. They are Garib, Mahilaye, Yuva, and Annadata. Their needs, their aspirations, and their welfare are our highest priority. The country progresses when they progress. All 4 require and receive government support in their quest to better their lives. Their empowerment and well-being will drive the country forward. Garib Kalyan, Desh Ka Kalyan. We believe in empowering the poor. The earlier approach of tackling poverty through entitlements had resulted in very modest outcomes. When the poor became empowered partners in the development process, government's power to assist them also increases manifold. With the pursuit of Sabka Saath, in these 10 years, the government has assisted 25 crore people to get freedom from multi-dimensional poverty. Our government's efforts are now getting synergized with energy and passion of such empowered people. This is truly elevating them from poverty. Direct benefit transfer of 34 lakh crore rupees from the government using PM Jan-Dhan accounts has led to savings of 2.7 lakh crores of rupees for the government. This savings has been realized through avoidance of leakages prevalent earlier. The savings have helped in providing more funds for Garib Kalyan. PM Swanidhi has provided credit assistance to 78 lakh street vendors. From that total of 78 lakh street vendors, 2.3 lakh have received credit for the 3rd time. PM Janman Yojana reaches out to the particularly vulnerable tribal groups who have remained outside the realm of development so far. PM Vishwakarma Yojana provides end-to-end support to artisans and craftspeople engaged in 18 trades. The schemes for empowerment of Divyangs and transgender persons reflect firm resolve of our government to leave no one behind. Welfare of Annadata. Farmers are our Annadata. Every year under PM Kisan Samman Yojana, direct financial assistance is provided to 11.8 crore farmers, including marginal and small farmers. Crop insurance is given to 4 crore farmers under PM Fasal Bima Yojana. These, besides several other programs, are assisting Annadata in producing food for the country and for the world. Electronic National Agricultural Market has integrated 1,361 mandis and is providing services to 1.8 crore farmers with trading volume of 3 lakh. Is poised for inclusive, balanced, higher growth and productivity. These are facilitated from farmer-centric policies, income support, coverage of risks through price and insurance support, promotion of technologies and innovations through startups. Empowering the Amrit PD, the Yuva. Our prosperity depends on adequately equipping and empowering the youth. The National Education Policy 2020 is ushering the transformational reforms. PM Schools for Rising India, PM Shri, are delivering quality teaching and nurturing holistic and well-rounded individuals. The Skill India mission has trained 1.4 crore youth upskilled and reskilled 54 lakh youth, and established 3,000 new ITIs. A large number of institutions of higher learning, namely 7 IITs, 16 triple ITs, 7 IIMs, 15 AIMS, and 390 universities have been set up. PM Mudra Yojana has sanctioned 43 crore loans, aggregating to 22.5 lakh crores of rupees for entrepreneurial aspirations of our youth. Besides that, Fund of Funds, Startup India, and Startup Credit Guarantee schemes are assisting our youth. They are also becoming Rozgar Data. The country is proud of our youth scaling new heights in sports. The highest ever medal tally in Asian Games and Asian Para Games in 2023 reflects a high confidence level. Chess prodigy and our #1 ranked player Pragnananda put up a stiff fight against the reigning world champion Magnus Carlsen in 2023. Today, India has over 80 chess grandmasters compared to little over 20 in 2010. Momentum for Nari Shakti, the empowerment of women through entrepreneurship, ease of living, and dignity for them has gained momentum in these 10 years. 30 crore Mudra Yojana loans have been given to women entrepreneurs. Female enrollment in higher education has gone up by 28% in 10 years. In STEM courses, girls and women constitute 43% of enrollment, one of the highest in the world. All these measures are getting reflected in the increasing participation of women in workforce. Making triple talaq illegal, reservation of 1/3 seats for women in the Lok Sabha and state assemblies, and giving over 70% houses under PM Awas Yojana in rural areas to women, and giving over 70% houses under PM Awas Yojana in rural areas to women as sole or joint owners have enhanced their dignity. Exemplary track record of governance, development, and performance. Besides delivering on high growth in terms of gross domestic product, the government is equally focused on a more comprehensive GDP, that is, governance, development, and performance. Our government has provided transparent, accountable, people-centric, and prompt, trust-based administration with citizen-first and minimum government, maximum governance approach. The impact of all-round development is discernible in all sectors. There is macroeconomic stability, including in the external sector. Investments are robust. The economy is doing well. People are living better and earning better, with even greater aspirations for future. Average real income of the people has increased by 50%. Inflation is moderate. People are getting empowered, equipped, and enabled to pursue their aspirations. There is effective and timely delivery of programs and of large projects. Economic management. The multi-pronged economic management over the past 10 years has complemented people-centric, inclusive development. Following are some of the major elements. 1, all forms of infrastructure, physical, digital, or social, are being built in record time. Number 2, all parts of the country are becoming active participants in economic growth. Number 3, digital public infrastructure, a new factor of production as in the 21st century, is instrumental in formalization of the economy. Number 4, goods and services tax has enabled one nation, one market, one tax. Tax reforms have led to deepening and widening of tax base. Number 5, strengthening of the financial sector has helped in making savings, credit, and investments more efficient. Number 6, GIFT, IFSC, and the Unified Regulatory Authority, IFSCA, are creating a robust gateway for global capital and financial services for the economy. Number 7, proactive inflation management has helped keep inflation within the policy band. Now, the global context, Honorable Speaker, sir. Geopolitically, global affairs are becoming more complex and challenging with wars and conflicts. Globalization is being redefined with reshoring and friendshoring, disruption and fragmentation of supply chains, and competition for critical minerals and technologies. A new world order is emerging after the COVID pandemic. India assumed the G20 presidency during very difficult times for the world. The global economy was going through high inflation, high interest rates, low growth, very high public debt, low trade growth, and climate changes. The pandemic has led to a crisis of food, fertilizer, fuel, and finances for the world, while India successfully navigated its way. The country showed the way forward and built consensus on solutions for those global problems. The recently announced India-Middle East-Europe economic corridor is a strategic and economic game changer for India and others. In the words of Honorable Prime Minister, the corridor, and I quote, will become the basis of world trade for hundreds of years to come, and history will remember that this corridor was initiated on Indian soil, unquote. Vision for Vikasit Bharat. Our vision for Vikasit Bharat is that of prosperous Bharat in harmony with nature, with modern infrastructure, and providing opportunities for all citizens and all regions to reach their potential. With confidence arising from strong and exemplary track record of performance and progress, earning Sabka Vishwas, the next 5 years will be years of unprecedented development and golden moments to realize the dream of developed India by 2047. The trinity of demography, democracy, and diversity backed by Sabka Prayas has the potential to fulfill aspirations of every Indian. As Honorable Prime Minister in his Independence Day address to the nation mentioned, I quote, "There is no dearth of opportunities, as many opportunities as we want. The country is capable of creating more opportunities. Sky is the limit," unquote. Strategy for Amrit Kal. Our government will adopt economic policies that foster and sustain growth, facilitate inclusive and sustainable development, improve productivity, create opportunities for all, help them enhance their capabilities, and contribute to generation of resources to power investments and fulfill aspirations. Guided by the principle, reform, perform, and transform, the government will take up next generation reforms and build consensus with the states and stakeholders for effective implementation. It is an important policy priority for our government to ensure timely and adequate finances, relevant technologies, and appropriate training for the micro, small, and medium enterprises, MSMEs, to grow and also compete globally. Orienting the regulatory environment to facilitate their growth will be an important element of this policy mix. Aligning with the Panchamrit goals, our government will facilitate sustaining high and more resource-efficient economic growth. This will work towards energy security in terms of availability, accessibility, and affordability. For meeting the investment needs, our government will prepare the financial sector in terms of size, capacity, skills, and regulatory framework. Aspirational Districts Program. Our government stands ready to assist the states in faster development of aspirational districts and blocks, including generation of ample economic opportunities. Development of the East. Our government will pay utmost attention to make the Eastern region and its people a powerful driver of India's growth. PM Awas Yojana Gramin. Despite the challenges due to COVID, implementation of PM Awas Yojana Gramin continued, and we are close to achieving the target of 3 crore houses. 2 crore more houses will be taken up in the next 5 years to meet the requirement arising from increase in the number of families. Rooftop solarization and Muft Bijli. Through rooftop solarization, 1 crore households will be enabled to obtain up to 300 units free electricity every month. This scheme follows the resolve of Honorable Prime Minister on the historic day of consecration of Sri Ram Mandir in Ayodhya. Following benefits are expected. Savings up to 15 to 18,000 rupees annually for households from free solar electricity and selling the surplus to the distribution companies. Charging of electric vehicles. Entrepreneurship opportunities for a large number of vendors for supply and installation. Employment opportunities for the youth with technical skills in manufacturing, installation, and maintenance. Housing for middle class. Our government will launch a scheme to help deserving sections of the middle class, and I quote from Honorable Prime Minister's words, living in rented houses or slums or chawls and unauthorized colonies, unquote, to buy or build their own houses. Medical colleges. Several youth are ambitious to get qualified as doctors. They aim to serve our people through improved healthcare services. Our government plans to set up more medical colleges by utilizing the existing hospital infrastructure under various departments. A committee for this purpose will be set up to examine the issues and make relevant recommendations. Cervical cancer vaccination. Our government will encourage vaccination for girls in the age group of 9 to 14 years for prevention of cervical cancer. Maternal and child health care. Various schemes for maternal and child care will be brought under one comprehensive program for synergy in implementation. Upgradation of Anganwadi centers under Saksham Anganwadi and Poshan 2.0 will be expedited for improved nutrition delivery, early childhood care, and development. The newly designed UWIN platform for managing immunization and intensified efforts of Mission Indradhanush will be rolled out expeditiously throughout the country. Ayushman Bharat. Healthcare cover under Ayushman Bharat scheme will be extended to all ASHA workers, to all Anganwadi workers and helpers. Agriculture and food processing. The efforts of value addition in agriculture sector and boosting farmers' incomes will be stepped up. Pradhan Mantri Kisan Sampada Yojana has benefited 38 lakh farmers and generated 10 lakh employment. Pradhan Mantri Formalization of Micro Food Processing Enterprises Yojana has assisted 2.4 lakh SHGs and 60,000 individuals with credit linkages. Other schemes are complementing the efforts for reducing post-harvest losses and improving productivity and incomes. For ensuring faster growth of the sector, our government will further promote private and public investment in post-harvest activities, including aggregation, modern storage, efficient supply chains, primary and secondary processing and marketing and branding. Nano DAP. After the successful adoption of nano urea, application of nano DAP on various crops will be expanded in all agroclimatic zones. Atmanirbhar Oil Seeds Abhiyan. Building on the initiative announced in 2022, a strategy will be formulated to achieve Atmanirbharta for oil seeds such as mustard, groundnut, sesame, soya bean, and sunflower. This will cover research for high-yielding varieties, widespread adoption of modern farming techniques, market linkages, procurement, value addition, and crop insurance. Dairy development. A comprehensive program for supporting dairy farmers will be formulated. Efforts are already on to control foot and mouth disease, India is the world's largest milk producer with India is the world's largest milk producer, but with low productivity of milch animals. The program will be built on the success of existing schemes such as Rashtriya Gokul Mission, National Livestock Mission, and infrastructure development funds for dairy processing and animal husbandry. Matsya Sampada. It was our government which set up a separate department for fisheries, realizing the importance of assisting fishermen. This has resulted in doubling of both inland and aquaculture production. Seafood exports since 2013-14 has also doubled. Implementation of Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana will be stepped up to 1. Enhance aquaculture productivity from existing 3 to 5 tons per hectare. 2. Double exports to 1 lakh crore rupees. And 3. Generate 55 lakh employment opportunities in the near future. 5 integrated aqua parks will also be set up. Lakpati Didi. $83 lakh SHGs. 83 lakh SHGs with 9 crore women are transforming rural socio-economic landscape with empowerment and self-reliance. Honorable Speaker said, their success has assisted nearly 1 crore women to become Lakpati Didi already. They are an inspiration to others. Their achievements will be recognized through honoring them. Buoyed by the success, it has been decided to enhance the target for Lakpati Didi from 2 crores to 3 crores. Technological changes, new age technologies and data are changing the lives of people and businesses. They are also enabling new economic opportunities and facilitating provision of high quality services at affordable prices for all, including those at the bottom of the pyramid. Opportunities for India at the global level are expanding. India is showing solutions through innovation and entrepreneurship of its people. Research and innovation for catalyzing growth, employment, and development. Prime Minister Shastri, Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri gave the slogan of Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. Prime Minister Vajpayee, Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, made that Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, Jai Vigyan. Prime Minister Modi has furthered that to Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, Jai Vigyan, and Jai Anusandhan. As innovation is the foundation of development. For our tech-savvy youth, this will be a golden era. A corpus of 1 lakh crore rupees will be established with 50-year interest-free loan provided. The corpus will provide long-term financing or refinancing with long tenors and low and or nil. I repeat that sentence. The corpus will provide long-term financing or refinancing with long tenors and low or nil interest rates. This will encourage the private sector to scale up research and innovation significantly in sunrise domains. We need to have programs that combine the powers of our youth and technology. A new scheme will be launched for strengthening deep tech technologies for defense purposes. and expediting Atmanirbharta. Infrastructure development. Building on the massive tripling of the capital expenditure outlay in the past 4 years, resulting in huge multiplier impact on economic growth and employment creation, the outlay for the next year is being increased by 11.1% to 11,111 crore rupees. This would be 3.4% of our GDP. Railways. 3 major economic railway corridor programs will be implemented. These are energy, mineral, and cement corridor. Number 2, port connectivity corridors. And number 3, high traffic density corridors. The projects have been identified under the PM Gati Shakti for enabling multimodal connectivity. They will improve logistics efficiency and reduce cost. The resultant decongestion of the high traffic corridors will also help in improving operations of passenger trains, resulting in safety and higher travel speed for passengers. Together with dedicated freight corridors, these 3 economic corridor programs will accelerate our GDP growth and reduce logistic costs. "40,000 normal rail bogies will be converted to Vande Bharat standards to enhance safety, convenience, and comfort of passengers." Aviation sector. The aviation sector has been galvanized in the past 10 years. Number of airports have doubled to 149. Rollout of air connectivity to Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities under UDAN scheme has been widespread. 517 new routes are carrying 1.3 crore passengers. Indian carriers have proactively placed orders for over 1,000 new aircrafts. Expansion of existing airports and development of new airports will continue expeditiously. Metro and Namo Bharat. We have a fast expanding middle class and rapid urbanization is taking place. Metro rail and Namo Bharat can be the catalyst for the required urban transformation. Expansion of these systems will be supported in large cities, focusing on transit-oriented development. Green energy. Towards meeting our commitment for net zero by 2070, the following measures will be taken. Viability gap funding will be provided for harnessing offshore wind energy, potential for initial capacity of 1 gigawatt. Coal gasification and liquefaction capacity of 100 metric tons will be set up by 2030. This will also help in reducing imports of natural gas, methanol, and ammonia. Phased mandatory blending of compressed biogas in compressed natural gas for transport and piped natural gas for domestic purposes will be mandated. Financial assistance will be provided for procurement of biomass aggregation machinery to support collection. Electric vehicle ecosystem. Our government will expand this and strengthen the e-vehicle ecosystem by supporting manufacturing and charging infrastructure. Greater adoption of e-buses for public transport networks will be encouraged through payment security mechanism. Biomanufacturing and biofoundry. For promoting green growth, a new scheme of biomanufacturing and biofoundry will be launched. This will provide environment-friendly alternatives such as biodegradable polymers, bioplastics, biopharmaceuticals, and bioagri inputs. This scheme will also help in transforming today's consumptive manufacturing paradigm to the one based on regenerative principles. Blue Economy 2.0. For promoting climate resilient activities for Blue Economy 2.0, a scheme for restoration and adaptation measures and coastal aquaculture and mariculture with integrated and multi-sectoral approach will be launched. Comprehensive development of tourist centers. The success of organizing G20 meetings in 60 places presented diversity of India to global audience. Our economic strength has made the country an attractive destination for business and conference tourism. Our middle class also now aspires to travel and explore. Tourism, including spiritual tourism, has tremendous opportunities for local entrepreneurship. States will be encouraged to take up comprehensive development of iconic tourist centers, branding and marketing them at global scale. A framework for rating of the centers based on quality of facilities and services will be established. Long-term interest-free loans will be provided to states for financing such development on matching basis. To address the emerging fervor for domestic tourism, Honorable Speaker, sir, projects for port connectivity, tourism infrastructure, and amenities will be taken up on our islands, including Lakshadweep. This will help in generating employment also. Promoting investments. The FDI inflow during 2014 to 23 was $596 billion US, marking a golden era. That is twice the inflow during 2005 to 14. For encouraging sustained foreign investment, we are negotiating bilateral investment treaties with our foreign partners in the spirit of First Develop India. FDI is First Develop India. Reforms in the states for Vikasit Bharat. Many growth and development enabling reforms are needed in the states for realizing the vision of Vikasit Bharat. A provision of 75,000 crore rupees as 50-year interest-free loan is proposed this year to support those milestone-linked reforms by the state governments. Societal changes. The government will form a high-powered committee for an extensive consideration of the challenges arising from fast population growth and demographic changes. The committee will be mandated to make recommendations for addressing these challenges comprehensively in relation to the goal of Vikasit Bharat. Amrit Kal as Kartavya Kal. Our government stands committed to strengthening and expanding the economy with high growth and to create conditions for people to realize their aspirations. Honorable Prime Minister, in his Independence Day address to the nation in the 75th year of our Republic, said, and I quote, "We commit ourselves to national development with new inspirations, new consciousness, new resolutions as the country opens up immense possibilities and opportunities. It is our Kartavya Kal." Unquote. Every challenge of the pre-2014 era was overcome through our economic management and our governance. These have placed the country on a resolute path of sustained high growth. This has been possible through right policies, true intentions, and appropriate decisions. In the full budget in July, Honorable Speaker, our government will present a detailed roadmap for our pursuit of Vikasit Bharat. Revised estimates of 2023-24. The revised estimate of the total receipts other than borrowings is 27.56 lakh crores of rupees, of which the tax receipts are 23.24 lakh crore rupees. The revised estimate of total expenditure is 44.90 lakh crore rupees. The revenue receipts at 30.03 lakh crore rupees are expected to be higher than the budget estimate, reflecting strong growth momentum and formalization in the economy. The revised estimate of the fiscal deficit is 5.8% of GDP, improving on the budget estimate, notwithstanding moderation in the nominal growth estimates. Budget estimate year 2024-25, the total receipts other than borrowings and total expenditure are estimated at 30.80 and 47.66 lakh crore rupees respectively. The tax receipts are estimated at 26.02 lakh crore rupees. The scheme of 50-year interest-free loan for capital expenditure to states will be continued this year with an outlay of 1.3 lakh crore rupees. We continue on the path of fiscal consolidation, as announced in my budget speech of 2021-22, to reduce fiscal deficit below 4.5% by 25-26. The fiscal deficit in 2024-25 is estimated to be 5.1% of GDP, adhering to that path. So the gross and net market borrowings through dated securities during 24-25 are estimated at 14.13 lakh crore rupees and 11.75 lakh crore respectively. Both will be less than that in 23-24. Now that the private investments are happening at scale, the lower borrowings by the central government will facilitate larger availability of credit for the private sector. Vote on account. I'll be seeking vote on account approval of the Parliament through the appropriation bill for a part of the financial year 2024-25. I will now move to part B. Honorable Speaker, sir, direct tax collections have more than trebled and the return filers swelled 2.4 times. I would like to assure the taxpayers that their contributions have been used wisely for the development of the country and welfare of its people. I appreciate the taxpayers for their continued support. The government has reduced and rationalized tax rates. Under the new tax scheme, there is now no tax liability for taxpayers with income up to 7 lakh rupees, up from 2.2 lakh rupees in the financial year 2013-14. The threshold for presumptive taxation for retail businesses was increased from 2 crores to 3 crores. Similarly, the threshold for professionals eligible for presumptive taxation was increased from 50 lakh rupees to 75 lakh rupees. Also, corporate tax rate was decreased from 30% to 22% for existing domestic companies and to 15% for certain new manufacturing companies. Honorable Speaker, sir, in the last 5 years, our focus has been to improve taxpayers' services. The age-old jurisdiction-based assessment system was transformed with the introduction of faceless assessment and appeal, thereby imparting greater efficiency, transparency, and accountability. Introduction of updated income tax returns, a new Form 26AS, and pre-filling of tax returns have made filing of tax returns simpler and easier. Average processing time of returns has been reduced from 93 days in the year 2013-14 to a mere 10 days this year, thereby making refunds faster. Indirect taxation. By unifying the highly fragmented indirect tax regime in India, the GST has reduced the compliance burden on trade and industry. The industry has acknowledged the benefits of GST. According to a recent survey conducted by a leading consulting firm, 94% of industry leaders view the transition to GST as largely positive. According to 80% of the respondents, it has led to supply chain optimization, as elimination of tax arbitrage and octroi has resulted in disbanding of checkposts at the state and city boundaries. At the same time, tax base of GST more than doubled, and the average monthly gross GST collection has almost doubled to 1.66 lakh crores this year. States too have benefited. States' SGST revenue, including compensation released to states in the post-GST period of 2017-18 to 2022-23, has achieved a buoyancy of 1.22. In contrast, the tax buoyancy of state revenues from subsumed taxes in the pre-GST 4-year period of 2012-13 to 2015-16 was a mere 0.72. The biggest beneficiaries are consumers, as reduction in logistic cost and taxes have brought down prices of most goods and services. We have taken a number of steps in customs to facilitate international trade. As a result, the import release time declined by 47% to 71 hours at inland container depots, by 28% to 44 hours at air cargo complexes, and by 27% to 85 hours at seaports over the last 4 years since 2019, when the national time release studies were first started. Tax proposals. As for tax proposals, in keeping with the convention, I do not propose to make any changes relating to taxation and propose to retain the same tax rates for direct and indirect taxes, including import duties. However, certain tax benefits to startups and investments made by sovereign wealth or pension funds, as also tax exemption on certain income of some IFSC units, are expiring on 31/3/2024. To provide continuity in taxation, I propose to extend the date to 31. Moreover, in line with our government's vision to improve ease of living and ease of doing business, I wish to make an announcement to improve taxpayer services. There are a large number of petty, non-verified, non-demands, disputed direct tax demands, many of them dating as far back as 1962, which continue to remain on the books, causing anxiety to honest taxpayers. and hindering refunds of subsequent years. Honorable Speaker, sir, I propose to withdraw such outstanding direct tax demands up to 25,000 rupees pertaining to the period up to financial year 2009-10 and up to 10,000 rupees for financial years 2010-11 to 2014-15. This is expected to benefit about a crore taxpayers. 1 crore taxpayers would benefit out of this. Economy then and now. In 2014, when our government assumed the reins, the responsibility to mend the economy step by step and to put the governance systems in order was enormous. The need of the hour was to give hope to the people, to attract investments, and to build support for the much needed reforms. The government did that successfully, following a strong belief of nation first. The crisis of those years has been overcome, and the economy has been put firmly on a high sustainable growth path with all-round development. It is now appropriate to look at where we were then. I repeat, it is now appropriate to look at where we were then till 2014 and where we are now, only for the purpose of drawing lessons from the mismanagement of those years. The government will lay a white paper on table of the House. The exemplary track record of governance, development, and performance, effective delivery, and Jan Kalyan has given the government trust, confidence, and blessings of the people to realize whatever it takes. The goal of Vikasit Bharat, with good intentions, true dedication, and hard work in the coming years and decades. With this, Honorable Speaker, I commend the interim budget to this august House. Jai Hind.
Well, it's a huge positive in terms of fiscal rectitude. Not only is the next year's fiscal deficit reduced to 5.1, I didn't get a single respondent expecting 5.1. So obviously all guns blazing in the bond market. The fiscal deficit on fiscal rectitude, it's a AAA for the system. But I believe the finance minister is still speaking.
1 of the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act 2003, medium-term fiscal policy strategy statement and macroeconomic framework statement.
Item number 3, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman.
Sir, with your permission, I rise to move for leave to introduce the Finance Bill 2024.
प्रश्न ये है कि विधेयक को पुनर्स्थापित करने की अनुमति प्रदान की जाए। जो सदस्य इसके पक्ष में हाँ कहें, जो सदस्य विरोध में ना कहें, मेरे विचार में।
Okay, so that's just the voice vote for the presentation of the speech and the budget. The important point really is fiscal rectitude. That's come in really good. Besides that, even the net borrowing program, our poll gave a number of 12 lakh crore net borrowing as the conservative estimate. It's now coming in at 11.5 lakh crore, 11.7 lakh crore. So that again has sent the bond markets booming. It's about 7.1 now compared to 7.18 before the speech started. So there's a fair degree of, positivity over there. And I think it will advantage even the banking stocks. I saw PSU banks booming. Obviously, they have a lot of bonds and the bond prices are going to rise. So there are mark-to-market gains to be made, which will be carried on March 31. So immediate EPS impact on these banks. The other big announcement really is that expenditure in the current year is lower. It's not markedly lower. The original number was 45 lakh crore. She's brought it down to 44.9 lakh crore. So that again is a big positive in terms of fiscal rectitude. Largely that, but in terms of positivity for the stock markets, the capex plan at 12% higher. There were some expectations of 20% higher. I think it's about 11% higher.
11%.
Even then, it's higher. So over a 35% jump in capex in the current year, and 11%, 11 to 12% jump in the next year will be treated as positive. So we will have to keep an eye on the construction, railway stocks as well. I didn't see many of them rising, but I think that will be slowly interred.
The point is the buoyancy, tax buoyancy expected to be very strong? I mean, the numbers that she gave.
No, the number
Because
is only 12%. Now, I don't know what kind of nominal GDP they've assumed, but it is only 11.9% actually growth in taxes that they're assuming. Considering that it is 14 or 15% this year, on top of that, I wouldn't consider it a very ambitious announcement.
In fact,
it's a very conservative announcement.
In fact, every year, if you see year after year for the last 3 years, the government estimates are far lower, and what you actually get up is much, much higher. So I'm not surprised that she has budgeted so much lower buoyancy on taxes.
Okay. I think the market is giving up because we were outperforming global markets, so there is a bit of giveaway in the stock markets. But really, there's nothing in the budget unless you were expecting some massive capex, rise to 12 lakh crore. She's short of that at 11.5 lakh crore in terms of the capex bill, a little short of perhaps outrageous expectations or optimistic expectations, not outrageous. Likewise, perhaps the expectations on the PM, Kisan Samman Nidhi, we were expecting that 8,000 rupee. It can still come, but it hasn't come in the budget. But there is a lot of announcement on rural houses and as well on farming, on fisheries. So maybe if you add all that, there is a lot of income transfer waiting to happen.
Yeah.
But at the moment, that income transfer, I wouldn't see much for FMCG stocks at this point in time. But I think they were banking on a big rural transfer.
Ashok, you were absolutely right. Our long speech, one of the shortest, right? That we've seen. Will we see more in the budget documents as and when we get them? I mean, things on divestment, etc. I mean, to that point about taxes assumed, nominal GDP assumed, will there be more detail?
Could be. For example, they announced the extension of tax exemption for sovereign wealth funds in the infrastructure sector. But given that the two pillars have been infra and manufacturing, we didn't hear the same announcement on the new manufacturing, which was also sunset in this year. So it's quite possible that the budget statement will have many more details than what we have heard. But generally, it seems to be status quo on tax matters, status quo on GST, status quo on import duties. I think the two big announcements, as you said, are really the fiscal deficit, the macros, the fiscal, the borrowings, and continuing expenditure on infrastructure, which I think is great news.
I think that PM Kisan Samman Nidhi, somehow the buzz was that from 6,000 rupee transfers, it would be increased to 8,000. That's not happened so far. It can still be an election promise, but it's not in the budget. So that could be something which the market may complain, that we expected consumption to get a pep up, and that did happen. But that's actually minor. I think the important point is there is a lot of encouragement for rural housing. I think I'll just pinpoint the number. I think it was 20 million homes. Yes, 20 million rural homes to be built in the next 5 years. Now, that's a large number. So that can be seen as positive because homes is a many-sided multiplier impact. And on that note, why don't we get the man of all, the last word on housing. KK Mistry, the former CEO of HDFC, is with us. Mr. Mistry, first thoughts on the entire budget. Extreme fiscal rectitude, way better than what the market was expecting, as well housing. The key point for you is 20 million rural homes is the target that they have set themselves for in the next 5 years. So clearly, the Rural Awas Yojana is getting a huge pep up.
Absolutely, Lata. I think it's a fabulous budget, truly a fabulous budget. There is something in this for everyone. And I think the biggest strength, as you said, is the fact that the fiscal deficit has been kept much lower, significantly lower than what anyone expected. People were talking of 5.5 and at best 5.3, and we end up at 5.1. So I think that's great for the system. And there is something in this budget for everyone. For each and every individual, there is something in this budget. I don't think we could have expected changes in the tax laws, because that, to my mind, would come after the elections in the final budget. So I don't think that was expected. One can always debate on what those changes can be in future. But growth for everyone, growth in infrastructure, target on housing, as you said, 3 crore houses have got done under the rural house program, another 2 crore houses. The target is to do another 2 crore houses. And we must remember that housing creates a huge amount of multiplier effect in the economy. So it's not just the people who are employed in the housing sector, in the construction sector, it is also a multiple of industries, cement, steel, paint, power, and multiple other ancillary industries which are benefited when housing gets a benefit. So I think all in all, fabulous budget.
Okay, and I guess thank you very much for that, Mr. Mistry. Please stay on. The bond yields have now gone below 7.1 to 7.08. And I think as the matter, seeps in, that even the gross borrowing is far less than this year. This year it was, I think, 15.7. They're reducing it next year to 14.7, when $25 billion is likely to flow. So something like 2 lakh crore of foreign funds money is going to come in because of the index inclusion. So that's a very light load on the banks. That will mean that bond yields have still space to go down. And that's very positive for the corporate sector, because after all, you price it over a spread over the sovereign. So the sovereign yield falls, the cost of capital for corporates also falls. So I think this is actually a very pro. It's almost like a tax cut. I mean, it's almost like a rate cut. You don't get a rate cut from the Reserve Bank, but if the yield falls by 10 basis points, it's as good as a rate cut. So I would be very surprised if the banks did not
actually,
show some
for
kind
now,
of
the reaction is coming on bond markets. Equity markets are absolutely flat. It's actually just turned into the green. I was wondering maybe the reaction on equities is also just interim. And it'll pick up. As Lata, you said, I mean, as the markets digest what has happened, right? And the favorable fiscal math, which should percolate through banks and, I mean, various other. And of course, Mr. Mistry said there is actually, we've only barely scratched the surface in terms of the big fiscal numbers, but there is a fair bit for I think pretty much all sections. Madhu Khela is also with us, founder at MK Ventures. Madhu, great to have you with us here. Good afternoon. You heard the budget speech. What did you make of it? Status quo on taxation and those matters, but on the fiscal side, seems to be very, very favorable.
Yeah, I think overall it's a fantastic budget. I would say that, given the election year, there was slight bit of nervousness that the government may deviate from the fiscal path, but not only they have adhered, but they have also given a clear direction for 2026 of adhering to 4.5% of the fiscal deficit. I think from a market perspective, this is the best possible outcome for this budget. Also, the next year borrowing number actually is slightly lower than the current year, which is again a very, very good news, I would say, from the market, from a market perspective. So I would say, given that it was an election year, and given that, there was all the reason to be a little bit more populist than what they have been, I think it's a very good news for the markets.
Oh, absolutely. This is actually a big signal to the market, right? And I think now the market is starting to pick up a bit. The Nifty, the Sensex have moved into the green, although by a very small amount. But the glide path to fiscal consolidation is something that will continue. And I think the street is going to take that very, very positively. Madhu, the other big signal that has come through from this budget is that it is a through and through budget that's focusing on infrastructure and housing, right? We spoke about a big boost to housing, but even the FY25 capex outlay is up about 11.1%. That's largely in line with expectations, but that's been the main focus area for the government. How are you looking at these two spaces, infra, capex, as well as the housing sector?
I think it's a clear continuation. If you look at the first part of the finance minister's speech, we don't realize how much road has got traveled, whether we talk of affordable housing, whether we talk of infrastructure, whether we talk of job creation, loans being given to smaller entrepreneurs, Mudra Yojana. So, on a year-on-year basis, it is not looking, as impactful as when it is spoken for the last 10 years. So I think there's a clear-cut continuation. And though personally, I would have liked to see the capex number a little bit higher than what they have done, but considering that it is an election year and there will not be much of the movement in the first 3-4 months of the year, this number is still good. But I think fantastic continuation for housing and infrastructure of the old policy, which again, I would say is a great news from a market perspective.
Yeah, actually the total capex expenditure is 11.1 lakh crore compared to 10 lakh crore. So it's about an 11% increase in the capex bill. I'm coming to you, Mr. Mistry, but the man who would be most delighted with the fiscal deficit cut would be Sajid Shenoy. Sajid, you were voting towards the 5.2%. You were the most optimistic, by the way, or if I want to say most conservative. She's done better than that. Your comments.
I think the budget needs a huge congratulation. You know, the foundation of macroeconomic policy is
Yes.
to be counter-cyclical. And when the economy needed, we saw a big push over the last 3 years. Now growth is recovering, and it was really important for the fiscal to scale back for two reasons. One is what we're not seeing is that even as the center is consolidating this year, state deficits have widened. So the consolidated deficit is larger than is believed. And this was a year where, despite strong growth, public debt to GDP actually will inch up. And that tells you the deficits had to come down for peace times. I think the government has hit exactly the right chord. We need fiscal conservatism. And what's really important is that the capital expenditure was not compromised at the altar. So we've got both a combination of capex being held steady and the deficit coming down. I'll be curious to see how much of the consolidation happens on the revenue side, where we had more buoyancy last year, how much will happen through asset sales, perhaps announced in the July budget, and how much happened through expenditure rationalization. But for now, I think this is just what the doctor ordered. And this is what, the focus now has to be macroeconomic stability, given the focus on growth the last few years.
The tax growth is seen at 11.9%, not even 12. Very legit.
Very conservative. That's very conservative. I think there'd be upside to that. And what happened this year? Taxes were budgeted conservatively so that the entire consolidation happened on the revenue side, not on the expenditure side. So,
I think it's more conservative than that, Sajid, because from what I see, and I haven't seen the actual budget table, I'm only going by the memory of the speech. She said that the total net tax receipts are 23.24. The budget estimate itself was 23.3. So looks like the revised estimate is not taken into cognizance the better performance this year as well. It looks like that, but I could be speaking too early. I'm only speaking by what I heard. If on this lower, conservatively estimated base, they are seeing a 11.9%, then the actual estimate is even more conservative. But I could be corrected. I could stand to be corrected. She has not revised the number higher, though the actual performance of the first 10 months is much higher. So I could have,
And again, we have last installment yet to come. The last installment is yet to come.
Oh yes,
and
the
that could be
fourth quarter
very,
is
very
yet to come.
robust.
So it could be much better. There's no doubt about that. Mr. Mistry, what do you see in the housing sector now? With overall interest rates itself, the sovereign borrowing so much cheaper, are you expecting rates to go down even without a rate cut? The effective borrowing cost coming down?
I think liquidity in the system should hopefully get better over a period of time. And as liquidity gets better, rates will certainly start coming down. But the buoyancy in the economy is so high. The feel-good factor in the economy, the feel-good factor amongst people is so very, very high that a 0.25%, 0.5% difference in interest rates is not going to make a very material difference in terms of people's willingness to go and buy a house. I think the demand is strong. We've seen 16% growth for housing loans in the system on a base which is continuously increasing 16% year after year. And in my opinion, the growth prospects in the years ahead could be upwards of 15 to 20% over the next several years.
Now, this is something both Mr. Mistry and Sajid should hear. The assumption of dividend from the RBI and public sector banks is 1.5 lakh crore. That is the revision in the FY24. I'm still FY25. They're expecting the same amount of 1.5 lakh crore from RBI and PSU banks. Now, PSU banks are going to do very well. So I think the assumption of this non-tax revenue is a very big buffer. So overall total receipts, I think, is going to do much better than tax receipts. That's my guess, but I'm still waiting for the entire table. Madhu, you have to tell us something about stocks, yaar. Looking at this, are you a buyer? You're a buyer in what sectors? Public sector banks, just for your information, if you don't have the screen in front of you, they're all jumping higher because mark-to-market gains on the bond book is very much there. Your thoughts, anything you would go out and bet on now, sector-wise? Madhu?
Yeah, I think, Lata, we continue to be very positive on the public sector banks. You have heard me many times, so I'll not repeat it again. We continue to be positive. We continue to be positive on the overall capex space, specifically the EPC companies, which are yet to be discovered by the market. But Lata, the broader theme is that, what we spoke even last time, the broader theme is that it's like a sigh of relief for the overall market that government has adhered to fiscal consolidation even in a year of election. So that's, I think, the biggest message. So the party in the market continues, it's a buffet out here. You choose what you want to buy.
Absolutely. I think you're underlining an important point. Why would a government not go and be, a spend on budget? Because you're pretty confident politically. So that is also perhaps a message. Yes, Mr. Kanava.
One thing which I didn't hear
Exactly.
on disinvestment, because given how the PSU shares have moved up, really I was hoping there'd be some announcement to say this is what we are wanting now to do on disinvestment, because the prices
I am sure it is there in the table. I'm sure it'll be there in the table, but she's decided to keep it a short speech. So she hasn't told us, but it's quite possible that there is going to be a better divestment number. But let me get more guests in. Ramdev Agarwal, chairman and founder, co-founder of Motilal Oswal Financial Services with us. Ramdev, first thoughts. What do you make of the budget?
Yeah, so I think the fiscal deficit coming at about 5.1 is a kind of a way beyond anybody's expectation.
Absolutely.
And that has its implications in the government borrowing, government expenditure growth. And so I think one has to see the details, but clearly it is positive for the bond markets. The rush for the bonds will be less, and hence the yield will fall, which market immediately signaled that. And in any case, we are talking about globally interest rate drop kind of a situation on a 12-month basis. So maybe it is good for the equity markets as we go forward on a lower interest rate scenario.
Ramdev, hi, good afternoon. For banks and financial services, where people have made such big bets, so far has not really worked out. What does this mean? I mean, we were discussing this earlier, and you also briefly mentioned it. Cost of funding, cost of money perhaps reduces without actually seeing a rate cut.
Yeah, so let's see. I mean, right now, there's a lot of dichotomy in the sense that credit growth is 15-17%, your M3 growth is only 9%. So there is a lot of liquidity squeeze, and I'm sure the RBI is keeping it for keeping the inflation under control. Maybe you ask all the economists who are coming there why there is a gap and how does it get resolved. Good thing is that economy is speeding past at the rate of 7.5%, and that is a I mean, government has got that growth rate. So I don't think they want to put further fuel. Last year before, economy was coming out of COVID and all, so they really upfronted the capital expenditure. Now, since the economy has got its pace, I think they want to take a breather, and they want to allow the private sector to take up the things. But we'll see how exactly the interest rate scenario shapes up, and how strongly the private sector responds in a given situation.
All right. Well, markets are absolutely flat right now. So let's get you some more opinion coming through. Let's cut across to Shireen, who is joined by NK Singh and the former CEA, KV Subramanian. Shireen, over to you.
Well, guys, it really has taken Nirmala Sitharaman to show the country what an interim budget looks like, at least in terms of the duration of this speech, 57 minutes, and we're done. No one was expecting it. Joining me here, of course, are the two budget editors, veteran of many budgets, NK Singh, the chairperson of the 15th Finance Commission. Also with us, of course, KV Subramanian, former chief economic advisor and ED at the IMF. Mr. Singh, straight to you, fiscal consolidation. Everyone was talking about 5.5, 5.4, 5.1. That's the number that Nirmala Sitharaman has delivered.
Quite extraordinary, isn't it, Shireen? Because considering that I was also the chairman of the Fiscal Responsibility Management Act, from the fiscal perspective, 0.7% expected consolidation, considering what GDP, 1 percentage point of GDP looks like, in absolute terms is a fairly daunting target. It's a clear signal on the government's continued commitment to a path of macroeconomic stability, fiscal consolidation, and I have no doubt that the debt numbers would also show this kind of a fiscal resolve and look in a southward direction. which is very important by way of signals to investors and to rating agencies on India's continued adherence, even in an election year, to a continued belief in the path of fiscal
And I think that context is important because, Mr. Subramaniam, as we were speaking in the morning, the expectation was that there could be some big ideas, some big schemes like PM Kisan. In fact, they haven't even touched PM Kisan, which was the big expectation that they would hike the number from 6,000. That hasn't happened. I think there is a tinge of disappointment on the capex number. You would agree because you were hoping for a higher number as well. At 11 lakh crore rupees, you know, that a little bit of a disappointment there.
So let me start by giving my initial big picture assessment. I have 3 words for the budget: JNV, judicious, non-populist, visionary.
JNV, judicious, non-populist, and visionary. That's a nice acronym there.
And in an election year, resisting the populist pressures. And I remember mentioning, earlier as well, for instance, I never viewed the PM Kisan scheme as a populist scheme because of the economic benefits that it brought. So it is consistent with the theme of this government, which is actually focused on judicial macroeconomic management. As I said, it's non-populist. But there is one big idea which I'll come to just in a minute. Visionary because it has actually, done, there are 2 aspects to it. One, what has already worked very well, with, they're continuing on that rather than trying to change too much. And at the same time, also laying out a vision. And now here's where I want to talk about the big idea that I have seen, which is the 1 lakh crore for innovation and research and development. As a researcher, that gladdens my heart enormously because, I think if India has to be a developed economy, and you would recall, Sherin, we had written a chapter on innovation in 2020. For the first time, India broke into the top 50 nations on innovation. I think that momentum needs to be carried forward. 1 lakh crore, 50-year loans, which is, almost interest-free, would I think be a big spur to R&D and innovation. On CapEx, I actually do think that there is space. I do think that as long as the money goes into capex and delivers growth, thereby making sure that the R minus G differential is negative. I'm not someone who actually believes in the 3%, 3% fiscal deficit, 6 to 6%. That's from the Maastricht Treaty, which is a political document. So for me, I think given the demand for infrastructure, I would want to see a greater allocation for capital expenditure.
Mr. Singh, state capex loans for FY25 to continue at 1.3 lakh crore rupees as well. There has been no change there. Your big takeaway as far as the announcements that have come in from the finance.
So let me put it this way. Subra used a different way of describing. I want to go back to something that she herself said, which is TCB, trust, confidence, and the blessings. Things which have worked well, do not tinker with them unduly.
So why fix it if it is broken?
Why fix it if it isn't broken? It reinforces trust of government's continued path of what it said on fiscal and overall macroeconomic management. It exudes confidence, as I said at the beginning, because notwithstanding other kinds of populist pressures, it had stuck to delivering something which is responsible, credible, and embedded in India's long-term growth story. You talked about the states, Shreen. I think that's a very big change. If you look at the document which was put out by the Economic Division, it looks as though the states have begun to utilize this in a very purposive way. The utilization last year has been close to about 86, 90%, over 90%, which means that the states themselves have switched over their expenditure pattern into believing on the long-term multiplier growth. So from that point of view, continuing to trust the states in providing this additional thing will add to the long-term growth story, a decisive move towards Viksit Bharat.
A decisive move indeed. So just again, for the benefit of our viewers who might just be joining in, FY25 PM GKY outlay at 2.05 lakh crores, and for the MNREGA, the outlay for FY24 BE was 60,000 crores, and I think it is unchanged at that. And the PM Kisan, the FY25 MNREGA allocation is now increased to 86,000 crore rupees versus the B of 60,000 crores. And as far as PM Kisan is concerned, the allocation remains unchanged at 60,000 crores. So broadly, what's the expectation now, given what has been delivered, on what we should expect from the full budget?
So I think the emphasis on capex, and just to add to what Dr. Singh was saying, that given the utilization of the 50-year interest-free loans, you would recall 1.3 lakh crore had been provided for, and 98,000 crores of that has been utilized, which has resulted in a 47% increase in capex by states. I think that's, again, it builds back to the big theme I said. What has worked well, they've actually doubled down on it. So the 75,000 crore that was announced by the Honorable FM, I don't know what, again, that is interest-free loans for states. What category is it in? Is it a subset of the 1.3 lakh crore? I'm actually not clear. I hope that'll get clarified in the press conference. And also the loans for tourism development to states. Again, that is part of the same theme, which is what has worked well. When states are being given incentives to do capex, they're responding. And I think that is the, so overall the emphasis on capex, growth multipliers, just a visionary, sort of move, I think, in the budget.
Mr. Singh, I'll just come back to you in 1 second. We've got the State Bank of India Chief Dinesh Khara joining us as well. Bank stocks are on a tear. Mr. Khara, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. I think the big headline as far as the banks are concerned, as far as the financial sector is concerned, is that fiscal deficit number much ahead of what anybody was estimating, much ahead of what anybody was expecting. Your first takeaway from Nirmala Sitharaman's sixth budget?
I think when it comes to the fiscal prudence, that is something which is very clearly demonstrated. And on the top of it, the kind of tax revenues which are coming in. So actually the tax to GDP ratio has improved significantly. So I think this is a very, very promising budget in terms of the revenue going up and also enabling the government to shore up the capex also is something which is very encouraging. And I think it's actually quite a growth-oriented budget. Apart from that, I would also like to mention that the new solar program, which has been indicated in the budget, I'm sure it will go a long way in terms of not only, showcasing the value of solar for individual households, but also it will also help in terms of conserving the fossil fuel and also improve the green index of the economy across the globe. So I think this is quite significant in terms of the country's commitment for achieving the zero carbonization kind of initiatives also. So I think it's quite a laudable budget. I would like to say like that.
Growth-oriented budget. But Ramdev, just to pick up on some of the themes that, for instance, we just heard on that rooftop solar scheme, which we had heard from the Prime Minister, the budget is taking it forward. The concessions that the IFSC entities will now get beyond the earlier sunset. In terms from a market's perspective, the themes that you believe this budget will now take forward and markets will play on.
Yeah, I think the current the expansion of the market through retail of about 30-40 million customers coming every year, that itself is a revolution itself. And that is because of the digital infrastructure and conducive environment of the attitude of the regulators and all. That is happening. On top of it, now in this budget, they are saying that fiscal significantly lower, and that should have a little more play in terms of lower interest rate. Globally also the interest rate environment is likely to be a little more easier. So I think all of it is going to play out, and economy is likely to grow at about 7.5%. So everything looks perfect, and this consolidation, fiscal consolidation is going to come as a boon for the markets.
You wanted to make a point.
I wanted to make 2 points, Shireen. First, to elaborate on a point that Dinesh just made, that, for the first time, the revenue numbers added together, it will exceed 18%. This is after a very long time. The revenue numbers, both for the central government and for the state government, look in the direction where we would like to be. This is not the end of the story, of course, because the finance minister has not touched the revenue rates. But in terms of the overall compliance effect, and in terms of the kinds of structures which is already built, it has resulted in an improved tax GDP ratio, which we have been hoping for quite a long time. So that is on the revenue side, we need to recognize that it has been a major contributor in realizing the daunting fiscal numbers. Second, I think I want to make a comment on this story of the push towards a green economy and towards India's adherence. Now, you see, this solar rooftop program, apart from the numbers and the allocations which have been made, has one very important policy thrust. One of the difficult tasks in terms not only from the viewpoint of the environment, but wearing the hat of the Finance Commission, which I chaired, the biggest elephant in the room of state finances is the state of the state electricity boards at the power distribution companies. Now, this program of the solar rooftop, if it can spur, incentivize, and push the repair of the state power distribution companies, it would be a deep structural reform for the Indian economy.
Well, that is an important point that you make, but let me toss it back across to Lata, Prashant, and Sonia in the studio. Guys, over to you.
Okay, well, we now have some more assumptions of the budget, the macro assumptions, and I want to toss them to the economist, both K.V. Subramaniam and Sajid Chinoy, who's with us. Sajid, the assumption of nominal GDP growth is only 10.5. So it is, okay, we don't have, okay, we should get to Sajid in just a minute. It's only 10.5. You know, there were expectations that they could assume 11% growth, but only assuming a 10.5% growth in nominal GDP, still the tax growth assumption is only 11.9. That works out to about a 1.2%, 1.2 times tax buoyancy, which, going by the performance of the current year where tax buoyancy is almost 1.4, this is an extremely conservative assumption. Another conservative assumption is that current year they have collected far more taxes in the first 10 months, and yet the revised number is not revised higher. It is revised lower by a few rupees only. It was 23.30 lakh crore. They've actually revised it down to 23.27 something. So the point is that the base can be revised higher. The actuals will be higher unless you assume a real